Hey guys, welcome to Through Flood and Flame. Here we are on page 87. Okay, so we found out what was going on with Louis Ramé. If you don't remember what was going on yesterday, the best thing to do is to read those 5 points that you did yesterday. That's why we do those, so we can remember what was going on, right? That he was on his sinking ship and thinking that, okay, he finds land. Look, this guy's so nice. He gives us food, only to come to find out that the governor wasn't as nice as him. Okay, right? And then that just goes into a whole mess of being in trials and different things until the Inquisition gets a hold of him. And now we're gonna see what happens to him, right? So let's start at the second to last paragraph on 87 where we left off yesterday. That's this one after many. I'm like pointing like 5 different paragraphs, right? This one right here, after many other questions. Okay, look what it says. After many other questions had been put to Ramé and boldly answered, he was condemned to be taken back into his dungeon and tortured. He pleaded, that means rogaba, that he had already received punishment and that they ought to take his past sufferings into consideration. Ramé was not placed on the rack or tortured with the thumbscrew, for the Inquisition had by this time learned that it was risky to subject foreigners to these punishments. Okay, so he was foreigner, so they weren't going to put him on the rack. Remember, that's where they kind of stretch you and different things like that. They didn't torture him with too many things, because what happens if they come to find out that the country that he came from wants to fight against the Inquisition and say that they treated them incorrectly. So they didn't really admit themselves that much there. But still, he endured torture to remain day after day, week after week, in a dark prison to which no sound penetrated. This guy couldn't even hear sound from the outside. Was enough to drive him mad. Oh my word, could you imagine? Now think about it. We wouldn't survive. Here, we would not survive something like that. You guys are so used to all the sounds. We were just laughing about that yesterday with how you guys make videos. How it's super hard to figure out how to make a video without the sounds of dogs, babies, gallinas, right? And all that different stuff. No, if somebody put us into a room where you couldn't hear a thing, you would go mad. You would go crazy. Okay, and that's what happened to him. Beside his jailer, the only person he saw was the chief inquisitor, who visited him every Saturday to ask him if he had decided to abjure his religion. At the end of the 3 months, the inquisitor ceased his visits. 2 years passed, and it seemed to Ramé, 2 years passed, that his existence had been forgotten by all but his jailer. Once during this period, he picked his silk stockings to pieces, and those are his calcetines, and taking a board from his bed, made a harp. Okay. For some days, he amused himself by playing it, but although he played softly, the jailer heard him. A harp, like that's the thing that is shaped kind of funny. It has strings, and you go, broo, broo, and it makes a beautiful noise. That's my imitation of a harp. I can't do anything else. I'm sorry. Don't judge me. You have to Google it if you don't know what I'm talking about. Okay. But although he played softly, the jailer heard him, and entering the dungeon, took the instrument away. Poor guy. At the end of his 2 years' imprisonment, he was again taken before the inquisitors and urged to abjure. But he remained firm, to resolve to die rather than deny his faith. Sent back to his gloomy dungeon, he remained there for 2 more years. Then once again, he was taken into the presence of the inquisitors. He was now broken down in health, but his spirit was as brave as ever. And when the inquisitors asked if he would recant, he answered that he would not. He relates in his account of his imprisonment that he was so weak that as he spoke, the tears were streaming from his eyes. The inquisitors now delivered sentence. Ramé was to be banished from Spanish territory, and until a ship was found to take him away, he was to remain in the custody of the officer of war. He was then asked to take an oath that he would not divulge anything that had been said or done to him during his imprisonment. So they're going to kick him out of Spain. I was like, thankfully, that's what I would think, right? Like, I don't want to come back to this country. You guys treated me so well. But then he was divulge means that you're not allowed to uncover, you're not allowed to share with other people what was done to you. That's what they said, that he had to promise that he would never do. To this he replied that he would say nothing concerning his imprisonment while he remained in the dominions of Spain, but that when he got back to France, he would have to tell his friends where he had been. The oath, with this reservation, was then administered to him. So he said, yeah, in Spain I won't say a thing. But in France, oh yeah, I'm going to tell people. But Ramé's imprisonment was not yet ended. He was transferred to the royal prison, formerly the palace of Montezuma, and put in irons. Okay, who is Montezuma? We know the Aztec emperor defeated by the Spaniard Cortés. Okay, right there. A month passed, and still he lay waiting for the day of his release. Christmas came, and when the viceroy made his customary inspection of the prison, Ramé implored him to set him free, or at any rate to lighten his punishment. Okay, so they promised that he was going to be set free. Didn't happen. Apparently, the viceroy was more humane than his clerical countrymen, for Ramé was removed to a convict cloth factory some 5 miles from Mexico. Unfortunately, he remained there only a short time. He was taken back to the royal prison where he was kept in irons for 6 months. Then came another change. He was placed on a mule and carried, still in irons, to Veracruz. The mule was a very vicious animal, and, irritated by the prisoner's irons, threw him several times, bucked him off, okay, kicked him off the mule. Ramé, who was considerably cut and bruised by these falls, declared later that he believed that he was put on the vicious mule in the hope that he would break his neck. My gosh. They were trying to kill him, but make it look like an accident. While Ramé was imprisoned at Veracruz, 5 Englishmen were brought in and placed in stocks. They had escaped from the convict cloth factory, but had been captured in the neighborhood of Veracruz. Their sufferings were soon ended. One night, a Spaniard entered the prison and, without a word of warning, cut their throats as they sat in the stocks. Okay, so he got to see all of that. Now that he was at Veracruz, Ramé expected every day to be taken aboard a ship and landed at some port which was not in Spanish territory. One morning he was released from the stocks, and he believed that at last his imprisonment was ended, but this hope was quickly killed. The jailer told him that he was to be taken back to Mexico. Soon he was once more in the royal prison, but his stay there was not of long duration. He was again sent to Veracruz and was this time taken aboard a Spanish ship bound for Havana, Cuba. Landed at Havana, Ramé was placed in prison until he could be shipped to Europe. Oh my stars, this poor guy. 6 months passed, and Ramé was beginning to despair of ever gaining his freedom, when he was removed to a ship bound for Cadiz. He would have been more hopeful of release had the ship been destined for a French, English, or Dutch port. And he was not surprised when arriving at Cadiz that he was taken to Seville and put in prison. Although badly treated, he felt that at Seville his chances of obtaining freedom were greater than had been when he was in Mexico. He's all over the place, this guy. After several unsuccessful appeals to the governor of the prison, he succeeded in getting a letter conveyed to the French ambassador at Madrid. And when his country's representative read his account of his imprisonment and sufferings, he laid the matter before the Spanish government. Thankfully. It's like the second time that an ambassador has helped in this situation. That's great. The authorities quickly sent instructions to Seville for Ramé's release, and without delay, the prisoner was taken to Cadiz and set free. Sheesh. His great desire was now to quit Spain as speedily as possible. See, I told you he didn't want to be there either. But he had no money to pay for a passage. Happily, he managed to find a French merchant with whom he had done business years before, And this man, horrified at the sufferings his countrymen had undergone, took him to his home and supported him until he found a ship that would take him to England. Thankfully, poor guy. Louis Ramé arrived in London on August 18th, 1687, and the story of his 11 years' imprisonment becoming known, many charitable Protestants interested themselves in him. He received the best medical care, and eventually his shattered health was partially restored. Okay, so he did get better because a lot of people helped him, a lot of brothers in Christ. Sad story about him. So the normal thing that we're going to do, 2-minute audio, beginning, middle, of end of what happened to Louis Ramé. Okay, and his 11 years imprisonment with the Spanish Inquisition. These people were caso serio. They were serious about this, that you could only be Catholic. Super, super sad. Okay, thanks guys. Bye.